Good afternoon, baseball fans. Astros pitcher Luis Garcia is looking like a blackjack dealer, busting high rollers this spring. Backup catcher Corey Lee shows what Brown can do for you. Hey, Hector Nurse, you keep throwing at Altuve. Dusty's going to give you the Ryan Stanek playoff treatment. And guys, spring forward should be called by its real name, time robbery. Now, excuse me while I attempt to take 30 minutes of yours. It's episode 14 of Stone Cold Stros, and it starts right now.
The Houston Astros, world champions!
Welcome into Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange. Posted up in the middle like a center is SportsMap Houston senior content contributor Charlie Palillo. You can follow him on Twitter at Palillo and read his weekly column on sportsmap.com. Next to him is sportsmap.com editor and host of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5's Moneyline, Josh Jordan. Follow him on Twitter at JoshJordan975. Charlie, Josh, welcome in.
First time I've posted up, really or metaphorically, in decades. But Brandon, come on. Other than the hour we lose that night, daylight saving time is fantastic. Stop.
Agree to
Beg
disagree.
to differ.
Yeah. I think you're outnumbered on this one. Before we get into today's topics, just want to do a little housekeeping. Want to say welcome to our live audience, still making their way in. We do this podcast live at 3 p.m. every Monday here on YouTube. While you're here, please hit like on the video. I see some of you that are here right now. Make sure you're hitting like on this video. Just search Stone Cold Shows on all of your podcast providers if you want to hear the audio version of this, and make sure to follow our parent channel, SportsMap Houston, on all your favorite social platforms by searching at SportsMap HOU. So guys, well, I should say audience, if you haven't been paying attention to spring baseball for whatever reason, be it that you actually have a life or other interests, we thought it'd be fun to run through a list of some of the young guys that are showing out early in Grapefruit League and or WBC, and we'll split that into two categories of arms and bats. But before we get into that, we did have some news from over the weekend. 3 guys who have been MIA this spring are now BIA, back in action. Brantley McCullers and Yordan Alvarez. So guys, of the 3 of these guys, Yordan would seem to be the clear-cut most important news, but who is number 2 in your eyes?
I'll go Lance McCullers, though I wouldn't want to cast a whole lot in banking on him getting and staying healthy. But with the Astros starting pitching depth, taking a significant hit of the loss of Justin Verlander, Hunter Brown is an unproven rookie, right? He flashed for 20 innings as a reliever. That was 20 innings as a reliever. For the Astros to have what you'd say is a 5-man rotation that can throw with any in the majors, plus 1, because no one makes it through a season with just 5 starting pitchers. I think McCullers is more essential to their pitching dominant hopes than Brantley is to their lineup being really good.
Yeah, and McCullers is a guy you have under contract for several more years for a lot of money. Brantley's a 1-year deal, so McCullers is the most important out of those 2 guys.
Yeah, I would agree, mainly because, not that I don't take Brantley for granted. I want Brantley in the lineup, great average, great veteran presence, but Brantley showed his veteran presence without the bat in his hand last postseason. Remember the story about him getting the team motivated after Game 3. So they actually won a World Series without him. I don't think you win a World Series, especially with the loss of Verlander. And I think you don't. I think it's really important that you have pitching depth on this team, and that does take us into kind of part 1 of our 2 parts kind of examination of the young guns that have kind of shown out during spring, and we're going to be watching the pitchings very, very closely because Verlander being gone and because of health concerns with Lance McCullers, albeit mild to this point. We'll knock on the proverbial wood. Who I'm most excited about this spring has been Luis Garcia. Garcia is not a spring chicken at 26, but he looks to be critical as Houston is really looking to prove their rotation is still World Series worthy. In your opinion, how crucial is it that Garcia can cement himself as a fixture of this starting rotation?
Well, I think he's the clear number 3 guy because he's good and been great. He's been good. ERA 3.48 in 21, 3.72, close to it, if not that on the nose, to win both showcases last season. But he still, I think, has unrealized upside. The most exciting thing that's happened so far in Astros spring training wasn't an Astros game. It was Garcia absolutely dominating in the Dominican Republic Galaxy of Stars lineup in 3 innings at the World Baseball Classic a couple of nights ago. He clearly, now he could have used the funky windup, but zero issue with the transition, the cha-cha, the samba, whatever we're calling it, out. No material effect on his load and fire when working from the windup. So that's been encouraging. Urquidy's a very solid and very good 4th or 5th guy, but I don't think anyone believes Urquidy can explode into a, say, number 2 level starter. Garcia, I think, might still have that in his bag. So after Framber and Javier, I think Garcia is the guy you point to because he's been durable. Right? He's hit 150 innings each of the last 2 seasons. McCullers has hit 150 innings once in his life. So I think Garcia is the guy you're thinking both qualitatively and quantitatively, who should be and probably needs to be the Astros' 3rd best starting pitcher this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Hunter Brown, good to see that he pitched a little better his last time out. He had some struggles with his command. Looks like he's kind of figured that out. So no worries there. But, you hope he slides into your 5 spot. They're going to need him. And, Urquidy, like Charlie said, a lot of teams would kill to have him as their 4th starter. So Astros are in very good shape. Interesting to see, Verlander have a great performance. There are a lot of stuff on Twitter. Are they going to miss him more than we're letting on? I'm not so sure. Of course, you're going to miss Verlander. He won the Cy Young, but this is a very deep staff. I think the pitching is going to be terrific, so I'm not too concerned. But Garcia is a big part of that. They're going to need him to eat some innings, and it'd be great to see him take another step forward because he's another guy. They have so much club control over him. So if we'll see what happens with Framber. It doesn't look like a deal's going to get done. Garcia might be a guy you really lean on in the coming years.
They're going to miss Verlander significantly. 175 innings at a 1.75 ERA and the trickle down of depth if you run into an injury or a guy just has an off year. But the Astros work with lots of wiggle room, right? Verlander, you want to go with WAR. He was a 7-win pitcher. Okay, let's say the Astros get borderline major league work in his stead. If you lose those 7 wins, you drop from 106 all the way to 99. So it's a substantial loss, but not one that jeopardizes their playoff hopes of any meaningful amount.
Hunter Brown is the new thing, and that's what I think always excitements around like what the new thing is. And there was a lot of, I think, maybe premature comments about him being a baby Verlander. Obviously, the correlation is going to be made because of the similarities in the mechanics. But I've always thought that Garcia could be a very, very key piece to the starting rotation because he's definitely shown flashes. We remember the divisional series where he pitched 5 innings of scoreless ball in relief. Interestingly enough, the outing that you referenced for Team Venezuela, 7 strikeouts over 3 innings of relief for Garcia. So that's an interesting, it's, I guess, kind of plays to what you like to call the fungibility of a young arm. And so I think it's really interesting. I'm excited to see what Garcia can bring. And I'm like you, Josh. If he can really take that step forward, that's really meaningful for this team. And I wonder if in some ways, Charlie, if maybe having to get rid of the Rock the Baby is a blessing in disguise for him. A lot less unneeded movement. I've heard some people, talk about less head movement being very meaningful for a pitcher in their mechanics. Maybe this was really good for him in the long run.
Well, if it was to hurt him, then I think, frankly, as a major league pitcher goes, he'd have been mentally weak because it's not like he's being told you can't throw a slider anymore, or when there's a runner on base, you're not allowed to throw to first at all. It was the frosting on the cake. It was the peripheral stuff. So that it has impacted him exactly 0 to this point. And, we'll judge, I guess, over time if it actually turns out to be for the better. And in terms of reaction to it, it's a classic example. If you're an Astros fan, oh, you Major League Baseball fuddy-duddies taking it away from him. If Garcia used the exact same windup as a New York Yankee, Astros fans would be saying, "God, what's this crap that he's doing out there?" So we know how he's going to have to pitch. He's pitched nothing but splendidly so far. And 26 years old really should be the heart of a pitcher's prime in terms of physically, and now with multiple years of experience under his belt. Another thing about Garcia, he just seems to be such a happy guy. He plays the game with joy. Best use of beads. I'm not remotely close to an expert on the subject, but the best use of the beads in the hair with the colors of Venezuela. Best bead use since maybe young Serena Williams winning a U.S. Open at 16 years old. I just think he's a very easy guy to root for. And if he nestles in on the merits behind Fromber and Javier this year, well, the Astros have a 1-2-3 that maybe won't be the very best in baseball, but it won't take long to call the roll.
Yeah, I can back that up, Charlie. Had some friends and family that just went down for spring training. Luis Garcia, according to everybody I talked to, super nice guy, willing to
smiling.
Yeah, give you autographs, smile. He was, sit there and talk to you for a while. So I heard nothing but great things out of Luis Garcia. Seems to be just a great dude.
And I won't forget the post-game interview with Garcia after the World Series was over with, and the reporter asked him, I think it was the local Fox reporter asked him about his affinity towards water parks. And he says, are you going to go celebrate by going to a water park? And he says, I don't know, maybe. I think there's just something really, there's something organic and really charismatic about a guy who just, like you said, Charlie, is always smiling. Josh, you mentioned it. A guy who's struggled a little bit, one of those young guys who's kind of struggled a little bit through the spring training, has been Hunter Brown. His last outing was his best. I thought the comments from Dusty were a little funny because he said he paired Brown with Corey Lee in this latest start, and he hoped the familiarity aspect of it would pay off. Maldy's at WBC, so he's unavailable anyway. So there are really only two options to choose from. But Josh, how much better do you feel? Because we saw two games in which Hunter Brown did not have good outings. How much better this last outing make you feel about Hunter Brown and kind of the prospect of going into this season?
I mean, a lot better. I don't know if there's a bigger number. So much of baseball is between the ears, and how your confidence is just kind of how well you pitched the last time you were out. We remember that, when he got used against the Yankees in the playoffs, he totally wild, just walking guys really struggling. And then we saw him kind of carry that here into spring training to, where he's walking the bases loaded. That's a problem. This is Major League Baseball. They expect you to be able to throw strikes. So when you're just walking the bases loaded, it's not even close. That's a concern. But the fact that he got that corrected, and, you point out Corey Lee, he did work with him. And Hunter Brown also talked about, he did use the pitch clock last year. A lot of those games he was pitching to Corey Lee. So that familiarity, I think, is a good thing, because he said he was a little rushed in his starts this spring. So to get back with somebody that he has timing and experience with, and to have a good outing, show that command, a dominant outing, not just, hey, he didn't walk three guys. He came out and pitched really well. So that's huge for this team, because they're going to lean on him early in the season.
The Verlander doppelganger wind-up split screen, I don't want to say it was a disservice to Hunter Brown, but that's tough, right? Yeah. Hunter Brown's not a super young kid. Justin Verlander was an all-star coming off, 230 innings pitched season. And I noted this in a Sports Map column a couple of weeks ago. But Verlander is one of the great power/control pitchers of all time. You have your prototypical power type guys through the history of the game, Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson, who were never noted for pinpoint control. Then you have your guys like Greg Maddux, who are just Picassos out there painting it and putting it wherever they want. Then you have the guys who are the hybrids, Roger Clemens, Tom Seaver. In this generation, Verlander, maybe to a little lesser extent in terms of, the weaker in the chain, in the weaker link in the chain. Max Scherzer, probably not quite the control of Verlander. Pedro Martinez, another one.
Johnson.
Hunter Brown's not going to become one of those guys. Yeah. But he can still be a damn good pitcher and a critical element and help the Astros win a whole bunch of games for a whole lot of years. if he can just get solidly consistent command. Going back to when he was at Wayne State throughout the minor leagues, he's had walk issues. So he doesn't need to get down to where he's walking one guy per 9 innings, but it's pretty tough to sustain success at the major league level walking 4 per 9 innings. And there are 2 levels of wildness. The more overt one is you're walking guys, or your catcher's moving all over the place behind the plate trying to corral your stuff. Then there's wild within the strike zone, where if you're not hitting your spots enough, well, you walk a guy, you walk another guy, maybe you throw a strike, but it's not where you want to throw the strike, and it's a 3-run homer. So Hunter Brown's still a babe in the woods in terms of major league experience. He flashed so well over 20 innings, right? It's like a bad hitter can go 12 for 25 in 1 week. It doesn't mean he's become a great hitter, but we know Hunter Brown has great stuff. So his baseline is pretty good, but we'll tell the tale if he's to become an upper echelon starting pitcher does he harness the command on a start in, start out basis?
We spoke last week about how some of the players feel like the pitch clock is advantage pitchers. And, Josh talked about how Hunter Brown felt like he was sped up a little bit. And I guess some of that can be attributed to the fact that he got called up to the majors last year and wasn't pitching with a pitch clock at the end of the season. And so maybe he got out of some of those best practices. But one of the things that's really going to be looked at is how do pitchers respond to having to being on the clock when you don't have time. And we talked about this a little bit last week, when you don't have time to kind of settle yourself, or your catcher doesn't have the opportunity to settle you as a pitcher, especially a young pitcher. Maybe you're a little early, maybe the game's moving a little fast for you. I think that's something to keep our eye on with Hunter Brown. Is a young pitcher, his going to be his first full meaningful season at the majors. We're going to have to see how he responds to being on time like that. It could be a good thing because maybe he's at a pace to where he can't get in his own head, or it could be a thing in which maybe there's going to be times in which maybe the game's running a little too fast for him. How soon do you think we'll know that with kind of how he's being affected by the pacing of the pitch clock?
I'd want to give him 8 to 10 starts into the season, provided he's getting a semi-regular turn. And we'll see how the Astros play this with off days. I would think they're going to go 5-man rotation regardless, even with the off days, right? The question would have been, had McCullers been healthy and you had 6,
yeah,
you don't want Fromber pitching on 7 days rest during the regular season if you have an off day on a Thursday and another one on the following Monday. Brown's first start should be against the offensively challenged Detroit Tigers in Game 5 of the season. So that should be a reasonably soft entry point, a chance for him to get established and have a first good outing. But batters, the cliche is, well, you need to give a guy 150 plate appearances to get a feel for how his season's going. That's roughly a quarter of the season. So for Hunter Brown, especially as a first-time major league starting pitcher, I wouldn't be looking to pull the ripcord and send him down to Sugar Land if through his first 3 starts, he's walked 5 guys in 13 innings and given up 7 earned runs.
Yeah, that number is 5, right? That's when Hunter Brown got into trouble in his early minor league careers. He was averaging over 5 walks per 9 innings. Now he's gotten it to, around 3 something, which is fine. As Charlie pointed to, anything under 4, I think you can live with. And I mean, for the first month of the season, he's probably going to be going out there every 5th day. I mean, McCullers is just now, playing catch. So I wouldn't expect him anytime in April for sure. And we'll see what happens with May.
Also newsworthy over the weekend, Forrest Whitley and JP France both optioned to the minors. Forrest Whitley also had a kind of a bounce back performance. Do we see either one of these guys anytime sooner than, I guess barring the wheels falling off on the rotation as far as injuries go, but we don't see either one of these guys. Do you think maybe we'll see one of these guys maybe when the rosters expand later in the year?
I think law of averages, necessity is the mother of invention. Someone gets a shot during the year, unless Dana Brown goes out and acquires a veteran innings guy insurance policy, what Jake Odorizzi had been for the Astros for a couple seasons here. Whitley needs to go down to the minors and pitch well there, because he hasn't pitched well in the minors in years. So to think that he was going to have, even if he had a couple, 3 excellent spring outings, that he's good to go in the major leagues, pipe dream, realistically. So he needs to go get innings and routine. I do think there probably comes a point with Whitley, as long as you're not feeling like he's going to drag the ship down to the bottom of the ocean. If the Astros have a need, even if Whitley's having a mediocre go of it at AAA, that you throw him in the water and see whether he sinks or swims. Ronel Blanco, they're seemingly lengthening him out. Journeyman type minor leaguer. He turns 30 later this year. So not a guy you're thinking is a piece for the future. But if he's their best starter at AAA, I think the nearest term option, by May 1st, they need a starter, Brandon Bielak, who's made some of those starts in the past, probably is the guy on nearest call.
Yeah, I think Bielak will be the first guy. I know to a lot of people, it's not super sexy because you've seen him before. It's nothing new. He's not a guy that's going to blow you away, but sometimes it doesn't matter. You just need somebody to go out there, eat some innings, and give you a chance to win a ball game. I'm with Charlie. Ronel Blanco, Dana Brown talked about maybe he could become a starter. He's been lights out in the Winter League the past couple of years. I mean, not even giving up a run, working as a closer. So kind of a different deal if you expect him to start. But they did try to send him out for a third inning the other day. I'll be curious to see how he does. But hopefully these are things we don't worry about. Let's hope the Astros, their main 5-6 guys are going to get the job done for the majority of the season. But it's a long year, so you never know how many guys you're going to need.
Yeah.
Okay, a play to the audience moment. Maybe Dana Brown could trade for Frankie Montas and Carlos Rodon.
I'd say don't discount Blanco's age just because, when you look at a guy like Rafael Montero having his best year at 30 or 31 in that same kind of age range. So it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Ronel Blanco could be blossoming, at this point. And we always talk about how, especially relief pitchers, seem to have these on-off years. We talked a lot about that on this podcast. As a matter of fact, Brad Peacock being one of those guys who would look lights out, and then the next year he just could not find it. So I would not be surprised at all if a guy like Blanco just finds it, just out of the law of averages. Just, he's been in the league and he could just put it together. Some guys just put it together a little later, and sometimes it's just for a single season. But if this happens to be his season and he can somehow crack the lineup, and again, there's going to be opportunities because, we don't know, again, McCullers just started throwing. We don't know what his contributions will be yet. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how it all plays out. Also like to see what Seth Martinez can bring to the table, because the broadcast team joked about how he was the best pitcher that couldn't crack a major league lineup last season. There's a lot of, I would say, backup quarterback enthusiasm about Seth Martinez. You're always interested in the thing that you don't see. And so Seth is one of these guys, in the few appearances and the few opportunities he's gotten, looks really sharp, looks really good. And I'd like to see more of it. And he just might be able to get that. And also looking forward to see what Matt Gage can bring to the table as the lefty in the lineup. We know Dusty likes a lefty. We know that's why Dana Brown went and got him a lefty. He seems to be the only one that's healthy at this point. So it looks like it's going to be his job to lose. So I'm excited about what either one of those guys bring to the table.
And very soon the reality that Hector Neris will not pitch to Jose Altuve ever again, at least while both are employed as members of the Houston Astros. Yeah, Martinez, given the job description of pitcher, that he never gives up runs is a pretty good thing. But unless Phil Maton gets off to a real rocky start, like last season Joe Smith as an Astro type start, you just play the numbers game. And if they're going to carry a lefty, there's no spot for Seth Martinez, who'd probably be like second setup man for 3/4 of other major league teams.
Yeah, Gage has 3 scoreless innings, so he's pitching well this spring. And I was reading up on him a little bit. He's got some of that invisible to him, kind of that Christian Javier, a little bit of that vertical movement. So he's a guy that can challenge you up in the zone and get some strikeouts. So man, it'd be nice to have a lefty that you could really depend on. We haven't had that in quite some time.
No, and the way James Click talked about it, it sounded like there was a real big push for that from Dusty Baker during their run last year. And so Dusty Baker believes that, that lefty on lefty matchup didn't work out so well for the Phillies, but obviously Dusty Baker believes in it, and the numbers back it up. On the flip side of the coin is offense. And because of load management between Jordan and Brantley, there will be some at-bats to be had this season, especially early on. Additionally, Jason Castro and Christian Vasquez are both gone, so someone will have to play that backup catcher role. And all eyes are now on the young bats. And as it was the Who said, it's the kids are all right. And so the Astros look to their young bats, and they've performed well this offseason. Card, please. There we go. So Justin Dearden, David Hensley, Yainer Diaz, Corey Lee, all with pretty impressive numbers so far in the spring training and the WBC. Well, that was just spring training numbers, but out of these guys, who are you excited to see? Obviously, Dearden's been taking the world by storm with the power. But a guy like, Yainer, who's really showing really nice OPS early. I believe is 24 at bat. I could be doubling that up at maybe 12. But small sample sizes, and obviously can't read too much when you're teeing off on minor league pitching. But all of these guys look really good, especially the guys who are going to be playing your backup catcher role.
Yainer's to me the most interesting because all he's done through the minor leagues is mash. So he's pounded on the door, I think, to earn a major league opportunity for ABs. Clearly, Maldonado is going to get the bulk of playing time, but bulk means 2/3, or should be no more than 2/3 at the most. Be 108 games. That's 54 starts. So you're looking at roughly 200 at bats there. And if you're hitting, well, then you can siphon some more playing time from Maldonado if you're earning more of your keep. If you're going to occasionally spell Abreu at first base, there are DH at bats to be had. I just look at Diaz line by line, year by year, and he's hit. Dearden's exciting, again, as the left-handed hitting possible complement to McCormick in center field. And you alluded to it, the sample size is so small. Going into Monday, no one with as many as 20 at bats. You go 0 for 4, you can lose 60 points off your batting average. You go 3 for 4, you can gain 50. But that Dearden has shown the power. He's also struck out 6 times in 15 at bats. Yeah. But he's also looked good in the outfield. The man can run. He's been the eye-opening guy because when the doors were thrown open in West Palm Beach, no one was thinking, Justin Dearden's the guy who could be the talk of camp. And he's been at least one of the talks of camp. Whereas Diaz, if he'd gone either 11 for 17 to start or 1 for 17 to start, it would be yay or eh. Instead, he's very solidly in between, looking like the guy who's always hit.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Corey Lee just to be a little different here. I mean, you got a first-round pick. It'd be nice for that to pay off for you. Right now, he's hitting in the 280s this spring. If he managed to do that, holy crap, what that would be in the regular season, it'd be 100 points higher than what Maldi's typically doing. Corey Lee's the better defensive catcher, great arm. So if you could somehow have him and he turns into a average or somewhat plus hitting catcher, and he's got 2 bombs, 5 RBI already this spring. So it'd be fantastic if he turned into what they hoped he would be when they took him in the first round.
And as you play the longer game, I mean, maybe slim down Maldi, who's able to extend his career, but I'm thinking in 2024, if it goes well, Diaz and Lee are splitting the job. Both right-handed hitters, so you're not looking at but with 2 catchers, that's fine. Someone can start 90 games. The other guy can start 72, however it works out. They're both viable major leaguers as you play the little bit longer game with the Astros and turn over the roster further going forward to have 2 legit major league catcher options, not yet 25 years of age. Not many organizations can claim that.
No, and wasn't Lee, I think he played like a few innings of first base today. I think I read that right. Yeah, Chandler Rome tweeted that out. He's going to play first base for the final 3 innings of today's game. So we also saw Michael Brantley was taking some reps over at first. So sounds like you got a whole lot of players that can do a lot of different things. So Astros are in a good spot here.
Yeah, and speaking of first, we didn't really talk about this. We don't have it in the rundown. There's not really a convenient place to shoehorn it in, so consider it shoehorned here. Yuli Gurriel signing a minor league deal with the Marlins. So I guess now we understand why he had turned down that original offer and was trying to find another place to land because it appeared like it was a minor league deal. That's where he ends up going. Life comes at you quick. 1 minute you're getting clutch hits, clutch RBIs in the World Series, and the next minute you're settling for a minor league deal. But age is just undefeated, unfortunately, for all of us. Just ask my hairline. And so, yeah, that's unfortunately, especially if you are a Houston fan, to kind of see how it ends up. But obviously, much love towards Yuli. Great run, great 7-year run. Is that right? Is it seven years in Houston?
Mid-season in 16.
Yeah. So a great run for Yuli here. We'll definitely, I don't think you can tell the story of the Houston Astros now as a franchise without mentioning Yuli Gurriel and his contributions. Charlie, you picked, when we talked about who the young guns you're excited about, you picked Diaz. Josh went with Lee. I'm going to go with Dearden. And that's not just because I just learned how to say his last name correctly, but it's because I think it makes sense. The fit makes sense because you're looking for someone to platoon alongside McCormick in center. And so it seems like Dearden can play. See, I almost learned it. I'm that close. It's not just because, Dearden's been featured in center, so he can clearly play some center. It's clearly where they have their eye on, but I just think the fit works there. And, not that I don't wish the best for Jake Myers, but a couple guys who we didn't mention on that list were Jake Myers and Mauricio Dubon, just guys who are not getting it done with the bat, even in spring. So, we always like to temper our expectations with the numbers that guys put up in spring, but Jake and Mauricio don't even have that to rely on. They are not hitting well. Do you think just because Jake's had more reps at the big league club, Charlie, that we'll see him featured? He'll get maybe first dibs at that backup out center field spot, even though he's not a platoon candidate with McCormick?
Dusty likes to go with veterans. It's not like Jake Myers qualifies as a veteran relative to Dearden, that he's played in the major leagues, but not well for some time now. And the righty-lefty thing, if you're looking to maximize flexibility, that's checkmark Dearden there. As long as you're going to give him at-bats. I don't think they'd go straight platoon in center field, even though McCormick was great against lefties, lousy against righties. I don't think if you carry Dearden, he's going to get all the starts against right-handed pitching. But if you're not going to commit to at least giving him a good chunk of those starts against right-handed pitching, or a day where if Brantley's not ready, and it's probably a precursor to Dearden making the team, splitting with Jordan in left field. And if Dearden's going to make it and be good, that's another one looking beyond 2023. Drew Gilbert's supposed to be the Astros center fielder and leadoff hitter of the future. How quickly that comes, who knows? But to me, it should be the back half of 2024 if the kid's the truth. Right? He's a 3-year college guy. He's not 19 years old. Well, then you have the Brantley role, right? Who's on a year-to-year, 1 year, and I'll presume 1 year, and this is it for him. So will they want Dearden playing part-time at the major league level early in the season if the spot is there, or every day at AAA and available when called upon?
Yeah, and I think it'll be like that with the catchers too. Whether it's Lee or Diaz, whoever gets the gig, I think the other guys got to go to AAA and play every day. They got to get at bats. They can't just sit there and do nothing. So that's going to be the other piece to watch. And you brought it up. Jake Myers, 1 extra base hit this spring. I believe he's at 267 is what I have here. So not terrible, but not great. And Dubon doing Dubon things. He's at 167. So, even coming in better shape this year, it doesn't seem to be making much of an impact with the bat.
How much does the looming possible departure of Kyle Tucker play into kind of how they treat and develop a guy like Dearden? Because they kind of need him in some ways to be, obviously the overlap will be much different than how it played out with Pena and Correa, but they kind of need Dearden to be the Pena to Kyle Tucker's Correa.
I don't think at all at this point, because we're talking 3 years out.
Right.
Dearden will be getting close to 30 by the time Kyle
Yeah.
Tucker's playing for someone else if that's how it's going to wind up in 2026. But, Jordan is locked up for near the rest of the decade. If Gilbert is to be that catalyst, top of the lineup center fielder, well, that leaves one everyday outfield spot plus the fourth guy DH type role. So opportunity knocking for Dearden, or maybe Jacob Melton makes a leap. Maybe a Colin Barber puts himself on the radar at some point, or maybe the Astros' next third outfielder isn't even in the system or on the roster, and they're making a trade or a free agent play. One guy we know they won't be getting, just to digress a little bit, the contract Corbin Carroll gets with the Diamondbacks, right? He's Drew Gilbert warp factor 5. Considered the best prospect in baseball, left-hand hitting center fielder, runs like a deer. 8 years, $111 million. He had 104 at bats as a rookie. He's still a rookie this year. The tie-in I wanted to make on that, no pity party for Yordan Alvarez. And he's not asking for one, I don't think. But I wonder if his agents are thinking, maybe we jumped the gun. Right, Carroll's a rookie. So 3 non-arbitration years, if he'd just gone year by year, he made roughly $3 million for those 3 years. So with 3 years before free agency, he now has 5 years, $108 million on the books. Yordan, one of the most fearsome and best sluggers in the game, 2 separate years as an absolute monster, and a third year where he was damn good. Carroll, 5 years, $108 million to buy out his last 3 years. Yordan, 6 years, $115 million. Again, $19.5 million per year. It's not like Jordan's going to be in any bread lines. But man, do the Astros have a deal as long as Jordan's hands are all right.
And that's the thing, right, yeah, Charlie? That's baked into that discount that you got with Jordan. Is he gets banged up a lot. He's had both of his knees operated on. The hand is clearly a chronic deal. It's been bothering him for since the summer, at least that we know of. So that's baked in, just like with McCullers, the $85 million for him. That his history of injuries is why he wasn't getting more than that. So who knows if Jordan played more, God forbid, he could have showed he's even more injury prone and it could have gone the other way. So I can't blame him for taking that guaranteed life-changing money. And as an Astros fan, I'm very happy he signed that contract.
The Astros, of course, you finesse these negotiations, depending which side of the street you're on. Hey, Kyle Tucker, Jordan's a much better hitter than you. So we're supposed to go way above 6 years, $115 million. Kyle Tucker, well, yeah, you got him on the cheap. You beat me in salary arbitration, so I have payback coming due there. And look at these other contracts all over baseball, including now a guy with 104 at-bats getting more than $1 million guaranteed for each of those at-bats. 8 years, $111 million.
And those contract sizes only go up. They go one direction. We never really see, unless some sort of cataclysmic thing happens within the sport, you never really see a normalization happen. So
the wild card is this: if this whole RSN industry is in the process of crashing and Major League Baseball can't figure out how to properly monetize taking it in-house and going all streaming or whatever, that's I don't want to say the Grim Reaper at the door, but it's going to be very interesting how that stuff shakes out.
Yeah, and it is. So I guess that's so 2 questions. One is, I guess, barring that doesn't, have a seismic impact on these contracts and teams' abilities to make revenue. What do you think the tipping point would be for a guy like Jim Crane to maybe change, kind of evolve his thought process on, maybe signing guys to longer deals? We did see a kind of a tone change from the Astros last week from Dana Brown talking about how, oh, well, yeah, those 10-year deals, those weren't really anything that I gave away in Atlanta. That was the owner doing that. And hey, we all know the big contracts have to run through every owner. So we don't really know how much of that tone change is Dana Brown maybe taking some bullets for Jim Crane. But I do wonder how much or at what point maybe Jim Crane's thinking on that evolves. And then if the RSN really does, or RSC really does have an impact on teams' abilities to make revenue, I wonder if we end up with this gigantic gap and how we reconcile that as a sport where guys are making these gigantic contracts. And then there's a whole generation of guys who maybe have to, accept different terms of contracts. Maybe they figure out a different way. It reminds me of, back in the NBA a few years ago when they just allowed teams to have kind of a write-off, a certain contract where they're like, hey, you could just write off a contract and get out from underneath it. I wonder what that looks like if the RSC thing really does crumble.
Well, it's not very effective on the audio side of things, but we'll just have to see.
Shrug.
Is this the tectonic? Yeah, I shrugged. Is this a tectonic plate shift? And oh my goodness, we'll use the Astros as the example because, well, it's Stone Cold Stros. Do they try to stream directly to consumer and charge $25 per month for it? $30 per month for it? And what's the subscriber level that will pay at that threshold? If you charge $30 per month, do you get 1/3 the subscribers relative to if you charge $10 per month, 1/3 the price? I'm sure they have bean counters already working on all this stuff because baseball, as opposed to the NFL and to a lesser extent the NBA, the local television revenues are massive. Major League Baseball's national TV deals, they still bring in huge money, but pennies on the dollar to the NFL and the NBA before the NBA's next round of deals, right? Their national contracts are much bigger. The nature of baseball, 162 games, it's a more localized and regional sport. So that spigot doesn't get turned off, but the water pressure level is turned down. We're going to hear a whole bunch of teams crying, if not poverty, that at least, hey, the golden goose has been choked here.
Yeah, and hopefully, if pitch clock starts making the games a little more appealing to a younger audience, maybe you get more people watching baseball games regularly. That can only be good for the sport. We talked about it briefly last week about the length of games, and some people are unhappy about it speeding up. But for the most part, you're just missing out on batting gloves getting adjusted, stepping off the rubber. And most importantly, I went and looked back. Games in the 70s and 80s, they averaged about 2.5 hours. That's how long those games were. They moved along a lot quicker. It's only over the last 10 years that the game started averaging over 3 hours per game. So this isn't really baseball completely changing things and looking ahead as much as they're like, well, the product was a little better in the 70s and 80s. Can we recapture some of that magic? And I think that's what they're trying to do.
Well, guys, we have hit the 42 minute mark here, and I guess in honor of Jackie Robinson, I guess we'll just call it a show. Before we go, I want to make sure everybody who's in here watching right now, make sure they hit the like button. Please give us some support. We appreciate everybody who has commented. You get one last opportunity to comment. Actually, you get way more than that. But for our bottom line question of the week. And guys, I thought after this conversation, we talked about who do you think is going to be, the breakout hitter and this, that, and that. I want to open it up to the entire roster for the Astros. And who do you guys think is going to be the Astros breakout player? You've got Michael Brantley, who's going to come back and certainly could be somebody is a candidate for comeback player of the year. Hunter Brown gets his first full year at the big club. Who do you guys think out of the entire roster is going to open up is going to be a breakout star for this team this year?
Boy, it's tough depending on how we're going to define breakout and from what launch point. I won't be surprised if Alex Bregman is a top 5 MVP year, fully healthy through the spring, going into the season, seemingly having refigured out what made Alex Bregman an absolute beast back in 18 and 19 over the last 2 months or so of last season. But would it be a breakout for Alex Bregman, who's already played a couple seasons at the superstar level? So I guess I'll circle back to close to where we started the program and go with Luis Garcia. On the national scale, though, Christian Javier, even despite what he did in the postseason, starting the no-hitter against the Phillies, it's still the shorter resume. So Javier might be the shrewder play, but I already think of Javier as proven as pitching at a number 2, maybe an ace starter level in his future. I don't think Garcia projects at that level, but since I wouldn't rule it out, I'll go with the beatific Luis Garcia.
All right. I'm going to turn back the clock a little bit. He's an older player, but he's new to us. How about Jose Abreu coming over here, getting in a lineup with a lot more protection, a lot more guys on base, and, of course, those Crawford boxes for a right-handed power hitter. I don't think that's bad news at all. So how about Jose Abreu comes out here, and I'm not saying he's going to get back to 30 home runs, but maybe he gets back into the 20s again.
And I'm going to go with, I gave away my answer. I'm going to go with Michael Brantley as a comeback player, because I really think he's really due for some good karma, some good health karma. And I could totally see this being a year for him where he can, now with that shoulder repair, we might even see maybe an uptick in power back to maybe what we saw from him a couple of years ago. Although he's been trending the opposite direction. Maybe it's because he's had a nagging shoulder. We don't know, but I'm going to say that. Just because I just want some positive mojo for Uncle Mike. I know it probably was very painful to have to sit on the bench and watch a World Series run and not be able to participate. Obviously, he was able to participate from a support role and a guy that was a locker room presence. But I'm going to wishfully think that Michael Brantley is going to be a guy who can contribute equally with his bat and his attitude. And so I'm going to take a look let's read some of the comments and kind of see what you guys say. First is we have a vote for Luis Garcia. That's awesome. I think that certainly aligns with what we're thinking. And he's really important. I hope that's it, because, man, if he can really establish himself, think of how critical it is if Javier can be the guy who we think he can be, and if Fromber can be the guy who he was last year, and then you can say if Luis Garcia can solidify himself as that number 3, well, now you know who your top 3 guys are, and that's really the most critical part of your rotation when you enter into the postseason. If you can tell me that Fromber, Javier, and Garcia are all going to be reliable this year, boy, that really bodes well for a postseason run. Frank says Hunter Brown is hopefully that guy. That'd be awesome too, because if you can get Urquidy, obviously, to be what he was for you last year, which is a very meaningful innings eater, having Hunter Brown to help round out the starting rotation would be super big. Eric says Abreu doesn't give up one run all season. I assume he means Brian Abreu. Let's see. Jose Abreu, great choice, 300 hitter, says James. Astro Wharf says Brian Abreu is ready to shine. And Charlie, I guess that speaks to kind of what you're talking about. Is like, where do we kind of start off? I mean, obviously Brian Abreu showed out in the postseason last year on a big stage, but I think now that he's a household name, I think people are going to, or as he becomes a household name, I think people are going to be really paying attention to him. And Marty feels the same way. Marty McShay says Brian Abreu as well. And Frank,
we need more Abreu's on the team.
Yeah, we really do. We lead the league in Jose's and Abreu's. And so that's going to wrap it up, which means that I play this sounder.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
And that's it for another episode. That's 14 episodes in the books. I want to thank everyone who commented and participated in the show today. I want to thank my co-hosts, Charlie and Josh. Thank you for talking some baseball with me. We are so close, guys, to the season starting up and having some real fun and talking about some very meaningful stuff instead of just prognosticating about what we think is going to happen. And as Frank says, mash that like button. So
please
again,
ring the bell, subscribe.
Yeah, all that good stuff. So guys, thank you so much. We will reconvene next week, as we will all season, Monday, 3 p.m. on Stone Cold Stros right here on YouTube. Thanks so much, guys. Go Stros.